The night air over Tehran was heavy with tension. For weeks, rumors had spread across political circles, intelligence agencies, and media networks around the world. Something big was coming. Military forces were on high alert across the Middle East, and behind closed doors, powerful leaders were preparing for a moment that could reshape the region forever. In the center of it all was one man. For more than 3 decades, he had stood at the very top of Iran's political and religious system. He was the supreme leader, the most powerful figure in the country, and a man whose influence reached far beyond Iran's borders. His name was Ali Khamenei. For many Iranians, he was the guardian of the revolution. For critics abroad, he was a symbol of resistance against Western influence and a controversial architect of regional power struggles. Regardless of perspective, one thing was certain. The fate of Iran had long been tied to his leadership. But on one dramatic night in early 2026, that long era would come to an abrupt and violent end. This is Avalor. Subscribe for deep documentary storytelling. Now, let's begin. Ali Khamenei's story began decades earlier. Born in 1939 in the holy city of Mashhad, he grew up in a deeply religious household. His father was a respected cleric, and from an early age, Khamenei was immersed in Islamic scholarship. During the turbulent decades that followed, Iran was ruled by Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, whose monarchy pursued modernization and close ties with Western nations. While many welcomed these changes, others saw them as a threat to Iran's religious identity and independence. Among the critics was a powerful cleric living in exile, Ruhollah Khomeini. Khamenei became one of Khomeini's supporters and followers. When protests erupted across Iran in 1978 and 1979, the political landscape shifted dramatically. Demonstrations spread through cities. Millions marched in the streets, and the Shah's government began to collapse. The uprising culminated in the historic Iranian Revolution, which ended centuries of monarchy and created a new political system based on Islamic governance. After the revolution succeeded, Khamenei rose quickly within the new leadership. His loyalty to Khomeini and his revolutionary credentials helped him gain influence inside the newly established Islamic Republic of Iran. In 1981, he survived a dramatic assassination attempt when a bomb hidden in a tape recorder exploded during a speech. The blast seriously injured him and left his right arm partially paralyzed. The attack only strengthened his reputation among supporters who viewed him as a survivor of the revolution's violent early years. Later that same year, Khamenei became the president of Iran, serving 2 terms during the difficult years of the Iran-Iraq War. But his greatest rise to power came in 1989. When Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini died that year, Iran faced a critical moment. The country needed a new supreme leader, someone capable of guiding the revolution into its next era. After intense debate among religious scholars and political leaders, Ali Khamenei was chosen for the role. Few people could have predicted that he would remain in that position for more than 35 years. During his long leadership, Khamenei oversaw massive changes both inside Iran and across the region. Iran expanded its influence throughout the Middle East, building alliances and supporting various political and military movements. At the same time, tensions between Iran and Western countries grew increasingly intense. Sanctions, diplomatic confrontations, and military threats became a constant part of international politics. The rivalry between Iran and its regional adversaries, especially Israel, became one of the defining geopolitical conflicts of the modern Middle East. By the mid-2020s, that tension had reached a dangerous new level. Proxy conflicts, cyber attacks, and military confrontations were escalating rapidly. Intelligence reports suggested that a direct clash between major powers could soon occur. Then, in early 2026, the situation suddenly spiraled out of control. In the weeks leading up to the fatal night, military activity across the region intensified dramatically. Intelligence satellites tracked unusual movements of aircraft and missile systems. Naval fleets were repositioned. Military bases raised their alert levels. Governments issued warnings. Analysts on international news networks debated what might happen next. Inside Tehran, security forces tightened protection around government buildings and military facilities. The leadership of Iran was well aware that the country could soon face a major confrontation, but few could have imagined how quickly events would unfold. Late one evening, air defense systems across Iran detected incoming aircraft approaching the capital. Within minutes, alarms sounded across military command centers. Radar operators tracked fast-moving objects crossing the sky. The signals indicated a coordinated strike. Moments later, explosions shook parts of Tehran. Witnesses described flashes of light cutting through the night sky as defensive missiles attempted to intercept incoming threats. The city echoed with the sound of distant blasts. The target of the operation, according to later reports, was believed to be a high-level command location connected to Iran's leadership. Inside one of those facilities was the supreme leader himself. Ali Khamenei had been meeting with senior officials to discuss the rapidly escalating crisis in the region. The meeting would become his final one. The strike happened quickly. Explosions rocked the compound, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area. Smoke and debris filled the air as emergency teams rushed toward the scene. Security forces immediately sealed off the location. Ambulances and military vehicles arrived within minutes, but the damage had already been done. Inside the facility, rescuers found destruction caused by the powerful blast. Reports began circulating among officials that several high-ranking figures had been injured. Or worse, among them was the supreme leader. Ali Khamenei had suffered catastrophic injuries during the attack. Despite emergency medical efforts, he did not survive. After decades at the center of Iranian power, the man who had led the country since 1989 was gone. For several hours, the news remained secret. Iranian authorities imposed strict information control while leaders gathered to determine how to respond. Communications between military commanders and government officials continued through the night. The death of a supreme leader was not simply a national tragedy. It was a moment with enormous political consequences. Under Iran's system, the supreme leader holds ultimate authority over the military, judiciary, and many aspects of government. Losing that figure suddenly could create instability. By dawn, Iran's leadership had made a decision. The country and the world would soon learn what had happened. The announcement came through state media. A somber broadcast interrupted normal programming. The presenter spoke slowly, delivering the message that millions of Iranians had feared. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, had died. The news spread instantly across Iran. Reactions ranged from shock to grief to uncertainty about the future. Crowds gathered in major cities. Some mourned openly, while others watched cautiously as the political situation developed. International reactions were equally dramatic. Governments around the world issued statements urging calm and warning against further escalation in the region. Analysts warned that the event could trigger a new phase of geopolitical conflict. The Middle East had entered an uncertain moment. In the days that followed, preparations began for a massive funeral ceremony in Tehran. Millions of mourners were expected to attend. Iran had seen similar scenes before, most notably during the funeral of Ruhollah Khomeini in 1989, which became one of the largest gatherings in human history. Now, another supreme leader would be laid to rest. Black banners appeared across cities. Religious leaders called for prayers. State television broadcast tributes recounting Khamenei's decades of leadership. Supporters described him as a defender of the revolution and a figure who had guided Iran through some of its most difficult periods. Critics abroad viewed his legacy very differently, pointing to decades of political repression and regional confrontation. Yet regardless of perspective, the impact of his leadership was undeniable. For more than 35 years, Ali Khamenei had shaped the direction of Iran. And now, his era had ended. But the question that now loomed over the country was perhaps the most important of all. Who would lead Iran next? Under Iran's constitution, the responsibility for choosing a new supreme leader falls to a powerful clerical body known as the Assembly of Experts. This group of religious scholars would need to meet and decide who would take the position once held by both Ruhollah Khomeini and Ali Khamenei. Their decision would determine the future of the Islamic Republic. It would also shape the balance of power throughout the Middle East. As the world watched events unfold, analysts debated what might come next. Would Iran's leadership choose someone with similar views to Khamenei? Would the country's policies change under new leadership? Or would the system remain exactly the same? No one knew for certain. What was clear, however, was that the death of Ali Khamenei marked the end of one of the longest and most influential leadership periods in modern Middle Eastern history. For decades, he had been a central figure in global politics. His speeches, decisions, and policies had influenced conflicts, diplomacy, and alliances across the region. Now his story had come to a close in a dramatic and violent moment that stunned the world. History would debate his legacy for many years to come. Supporters would remember him as a guardian of Iran's revolution. Critics would remember him as a controversial leader whose policies shaped decades of confrontation. But regardless of opinion, one truth remains clear. The night Ali Khamenei died was a moment that changed the course of Iran's future, and the consequences of that night would continue to unfold long after the explosions faded from the sky over Tehran. This is Abalor. Subscribe.